Okay, so get this. Russia's MiG-41. They say this thing could hit Mach 5, like 5 times the speed of sound. Is that even possible?
Yeah, sounds pretty wild, right?
Wild doesn't even begin to describe it. So we've got a whole mountain of reports, analyses, you name it, and we're going to figure out if this MiG-41 is the real deal or just a bunch of hot air.
Well, I think what's really interesting here, and something that might surprise you, is that the MiG program in Russia is actually pretty far along.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've already moved past the MiG-35, and they're actively working on this MiG-41.
So this isn't just some, like, far-off concept.
No, it's something they're actively developing.
Okay, so this is getting serious. This is getting real now. From what I've been reading, the MiG-41 also goes by this other name, PAK DP, which stands for Perspective Air Complex for Long-Range Interception.
That's right.
And it's got some pretty ambitious goals.
Very ambitious.
We're talking high-altitude, hypersonic interceptor designed to replace the aging MiG-31.
Yeah, and that jump from the MiG-31 to this proposed MiG-41 is immense. I mean, even hitting and sustaining Mach 3 is a huge accomplishment for the fighter jets we have right now.
Right.
So the technological hurdles to hit Mach 5 are enormous.
Yeah. Well, one of the articles I was reading was talking about how to get to Mach 5. You'd need these breakthroughs in material science, engine technology, aerodynamics.
Absolutely.
We're talking about insane temperatures and air resistance.
Yeah, it's a whole other ballgame.
It boggles the mind.
And, you know, it's not just about speed either. They're also aiming for advanced stealth capabilities, variable cycle engines, which allow an aircraft to change how the engine performs for efficiency at different speeds and altitudes,
Right.
and maybe even unmanned versions of this MiG-41.
So it's like they're taking all the most advanced aerospace technology we can imagine and just cramming it into this one jet.
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But amidst all this excitement, there's got to be a healthy dose of skepticism, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Russia has a history of ambitious aerospace programs. Some of them have been successful and some not so much. And with the current economic and technological challenges that they're facing, I mean, this whole thing becomes even more difficult to pull off.
Right. And then you've got the timeline, which seems unbelievably ambitious.
Unbelievable.
Even for Russia. They're aiming for a maiden flight in 2025.
Yeah.
With this thing being operational by 2028. I mean, is that even realistic?
That's the big question. To put it into perspective, no country right now has a 6th-generation fighter. Only 3, Russia, China, and the U.S. have operational 5th-generation aircraft.
Right.
And, you know, developing a 6th-generation fighter is a massive undertaking.
Massive.
Even for a country with the resources and the experience that Russia has in aerospace engineering.
So let's talk specifics. How are they even calling this thing the MiG-41? One of the reports you sent mentioned that Russia doesn't usually give official designations until an aircraft is ready for service.
That's true. Officially, it's the PAK DP.
Right.
But this MiG-41 name, it actually comes from the project code is Delhi 41, which basically means product 41. And the media, the public, everybody just kind of latched onto that MiG-41 name.
Product 41. Sounds very hush-hush.
It does, doesn't it?
So given all this secrecy around the project, what can we actually find out about the specifications? What are we looking at here?
Well, hard details are really hard to come by.
Yeah.
But based on what we have, the estimated maximum airspeed is at least Mach 3. Some sources even say it could go as high as Mach 4 or even Mach 5.
Wow.
But as we've said, you know, you got to take those claims with a grain of salt.
Right. Those Mach 5 claims seem pretty iffy given everything we've talked about.
Iffy is a good word.
What about the service ceiling? How high is this thing supposed to be able to fly?
Well, that's another thing where the information's kind of all over the place. Estimates range from 12,000 meters to a crazy 45,000 meters.
Wow.
So potentially this thing could operate anywhere from the typical cruising altitude of a commercial airliner to basically the edge of space.
That's a pretty big range. What about the engine? What's going to power this beast if it ever gets built?
Well, the most likely candidate is the Saturn AL-51. It's an afterburning, low-bypass turbofan engine.
Okay.
2 shafts, a 3-stage fan, a 5-stage high-pressure compressor.
To be honest with you, I'm no engineer, so can you break that down for me? What's so special about this engine?
Yeah, so the AL-51, it's a complex piece of engineering, basically a turbofan engine. It's like a jet engine, but with a big fan at the front.
Okay.
And this increases the thrust and the fuel efficiency. But what makes the AL-51 unique are these design elements that are aimed at reducing its radar signature.
Okay.
So the engine inlets and nozzles have these special features to make the aircraft less visible to radar.
So they're not just thinking about speed here. They're thinking about stealth and overall performance.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing. You know, when I think about all this tech packed into one jet, It still feels like something out of a sci-fi movie. Are we getting a little carried away here?
It's always good to be skeptical. Building a sixth-generation fighter is incredibly complex and expensive.
Right.
It takes massive investment, cutting-edge technology, and a highly skilled workforce.
Yeah.
And right now, Russia is facing some big challenges in all those areas.
So even if the MiG-41 never actually gets off the ground,
Yeah.
the fact that Russia's even pursuing this project is significant, wouldn't you say?
I think it is. It gives us valuable insights into their military ambitions, their technological capabilities, their strategic priorities.
Okay. I think this is a good point for us to pause and let our listeners absorb all this information.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
We've covered a lot of ground already, but there's still a lot more to unpack. When we come back, we'll go deeper into the implications of the MiG-41
Absolutely.
and what it could mean for the future of warfare. Stay with us. All right, so we're back. And before the break, we were talking about Russia's MiG-41 project, this crazy, fast stealth fighter jet that's either going to completely change air warfare or maybe never even get off the ground. I don't know. It's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's really pushing the limits of what we thought was possible with aviation technology.
No kidding. But here's the thing that I keep coming back to. Even if this thing is more hype than reality, why does it even matter? What does this whole MiG-41 story tell us about the bigger picture?
That's the question, isn't it? I think it comes down to this. The MiG-41 project, even just as an idea, gives us a peek into the future of air warfare. It shows us where military technology is headed.
So for those of us who aren't, military strategists or aerospace engineers, what's the takeaway here? Why should we care about some super fast, stealthy fighter jet that might not even exist?
Well, I think it's important to understand that this isn't just about one jet. It's about how quickly technology is advancing, especially military tech. We're talking about potential capabilities that used to be pure science fiction.
Like a fighter jet that can outrun a missile.
Yeah.
Or fly to the edge of space.
Exactly. And while the MiG-41 might not actually do all the things they say, is the fact that they're even thinking about it is a wake-up call. It shows us what might be possible, and it forces other countries, especially the U.S. and China, to respond.
So it's like a technological arms race.
Yeah.
But for cutting-edge aerospace technology.
Yeah, you could say that. It's pushing the limits of what we can achieve in military aviation, and it's speeding up this global race for air superiority.
It's like a big game of chess. Each move changes what happens next.
Speaking of big moves, we haven't really talked about what makes the MiG-41 a sixth-generation fighter jet. What makes it different from the jets we have now, like the F-35 or the Su-57?
That's a great point. And actually defining what makes a fighter jet sixth generation is still kind of up for debate. But there's some key things that most people agree on.
Okay, so break it down for me. What makes a fighter jet sixth generation?
Well, the first thing is advanced stealth capabilities. We're talking about going way beyond what we see in the fifth-generation fighters today.
Okay.
Imagine a level of stealth that makes them much harder to detect on radar.
So these jets would be practically invisible to radar?
Well, not totally invisible, but their radar signature would be so small that they'd be super hard to find and track.
Wow, that's incredible.
What else?
Whoa. Sixth-generation fighters are also expected to have much better avionics and sensor fusion capabilities.
I'm going to need you to explain that one. What does that even mean?
Basically, it means that these aircraft would have really advanced systems for gathering, processing, and sharing information about the battle space.
Okay.
They'd be able to see, further track more targets, and make decisions faster than any fighter jet we have now.
It's like they'd have artificial intelligence piloting them.
Well, there will definitely be a lot of automation and AI in these systems. The pilot would basically become like a mission commander, overseeing what the aircraft does and making the big strategic decisions instead of just flying the plane.
So it's like having a supercomputer for a co-pilot.
That's a good way to put it. Another important thing about sixth-generation fighters is something called enhanced human systems integration.
Okay.
This is all about creating a seamless connection between the pilot and the aircraft systems.
So making the pilot and the jet work together better?
Exactly. The goal is to create a more intuitive and efficient way for the pilot to control the aircraft and all its systems. Almost like it becomes an extension of their own senses and thoughts.
Okay, that's pretty mind-blowing. Anything else that makes a sixth-generation fighter special?
Yeah. The last big thing is the potential for optional remote or autonomous control.
What does that mean?
It means that these fighters might be able to fly missions without a pilot on board, or with a pilot controlling the aircraft remotely from a safe location.
Wait, so we're talking about pilotless fighter jets. That sounds like something out of a movie.
It might sound crazy, but the technology is getting there fast. Unmanned systems are already used a lot in warfare, and it's only a matter of time before we see fully autonomous combat aircraft.
That's both amazing and kind of scary. So the future of air warfare is going to look a lot different than what we're used to. But we have to remember, right, that the MiG-41 is just one example of a sixth-generation fighter program.
Right. There are other countries, too.
Yeah.
West China, the UK, Japan. They're all spending a ton of money to develop their own sixth-generation fighters.
So this isn't just a Russian thing. It's happening all over the world.
Exactly. The race for air superiority is really heating up, and sixth-generation fighters are the next big thing.
So now that we know a bit more about what a sixth-generation fighter is, let's talk about the MiG-41 again.
Yeah.
If Russia actually manages to build this thing, could a working MiG-41 with all its fancy capabilities actually give them an advantage? Like, could it actually shift the balance of power?
That's a good question. And it's definitely worth thinking about. It's not just about one jet. Remember, these advanced technologies, they could change the whole military landscape.
And all this is happening while there's more and more tension between countries, and the competition between the big powers is growing.
Absolutely. The world is becoming a more complex and unpredictable place, and things like the MiG-41 are just adding another layer of uncertainty to the mix.
It's definitely an interesting time to be alive. We need to give our listeners a minute to process all this before we move on.
Yeah, for sure.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive, but there's still more to explore. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with some final thoughts about the MiG-41 and what it all means for the future of air warfare. Welcome back to the deep dive. So we spent this whole episode looking at this mysterious MiG-41, this supposed sixth-generation fighter jet from Russia that's got everybody in the military world talking.
It has been a fascinating look, hasn't it?
It really has. From claims about it hitting Mach 5 to the possibility of it flying without a pilot. I mean, the MiG-41 has definitely given us a lot to think about.
It really has.
We've talked about the strategy behind it, the doubts people have, the whole thing. But before we finish this deep dive, I want to bring it back to our listeners. What are the big takeaways here? What should we all be watching for as this story develops?
You know, if I had to pick one essential point, it's this. The world of military technology, it's changing so fast.
Yeah.
The MiG-41 is just one example, and this trend, it has the power to really change things on a global scale.
Okay, so how does this affect the average person? How does this arms race for hypersonic jets and AI-powered warfare? How does it impact our daily lives?
That's a good question, and it's one we should all be asking. When these weapon systems get more and more sophisticated, it increases the chances of conflict. The stakes get higher for everybody.
That's a pretty sobering thought.
It is, but it's also a call to action. We can't just sit back and watch this happen. We need to be informed about these developments. We need to talk about the ethics of it all, the practical implications. We need to make our voices heard.
So what can we do? How can we stay informed and actually make a difference in a world that seems to be more and more about complex technology and military power plays?
There are a lot of ways to get involved. The first thing is to stay informed, read good news sources, follow experts in the field, and, listen to podcasts like this one.
Hey, that's us.
Exactly. But don't stop there. Dive deeper. Seek out different viewpoints. Challenge assumptions. Ask tough questions. Knowledge is power. The more we understand about these technologies and what they could mean, the better prepared we are for the future.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all this.
Yeah.
That's a lot to take in. We're talking about things that seem like they're straight out of science fiction.
I know what you mean. But this is our world. These are real technologies with real-world consequences. It's our responsibility to be engaged, informed citizens.
Yeah, we can't just ignore it and hope it goes away.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe someday we'll look back at all this rapid technological change and be amazed by how far we've come. Maybe we'll even have air shows with hypersonic jets, like the MiG-41 flying around.
No, that would be something to see.
It would. But let's hope they're being used for good things, like keeping the peace and preventing conflict.
I think we can all agree on that.
Well, this has been a really thought-provoking deep dive. It's always great to explore these complex topics with you and with our listeners.
I couldn't agree more. And a big thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this journey into the world of cutting-edge military tech and the potential future of air warfare.
Until next time, keep looking up, stay curious, and remember the future is what we make it.
And maybe, just maybe, keep an eye out for that MiG-41 streaking across the sky. You never know.